here is Jim Acosta, CNN's Jim Acosta on Friday, reporting on J.D. Gordon. J.D. Gordon is a name that I haven't heard much. He was the Trump National Security Policy Representative at the RNC. He's no longer with the campaign, or I should say the Trump organization. He has in the past claimed that Donald Trump had nothing to do with the change in the Republican Party platform regarding Ukraine. Now, the fact is that the GOP party platform was changed to reflect a position that was more or less consistent with Obama's regarding the Ukraine in terms of arming them more. Obama, and I think, reports were that he was fighting people in the administration about this, was basically saying, like, we're not going to escalate the situation here by arming the Ukrainians. And I happen to think that was also a very good policy. It is unique that the Trump campaign and the Republican Party would go out of their way on a topic that seemed to be rather under the radar in terms of your typical Republican voter, to align their policy with that of Obama's, even if that was the secret belief of Donald Trump, right? And so maybe that's why this guy, J.D. Gordon, had lied about it before. We want to inoculate Trump from this because of the blowback we'll get from the Republican voter that supports him, because that policy is too closely aligned with Obama's. That's the charitable reading as to why he lied. But now we find out as of Friday that he did lie and that Trump was behind this policy change.
That's right, Wolf. I just got off the phone with J.D. Gordon, who served as a national security advisor to the Trump campaign before the election. He's no longer with Donald Trump or the administration at this point. But he does tell me, Wolf, that over the summer at the Republican convention in Cleveland, that he did have a conversation with the Russian ambassador as well as other national security advisors for President, then candidate Trump at the time, Carter Page and Waleed Farez. They all met at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland for a gathering there. And then J.D. Gordon says he met again with the ambassador at a cocktail reception later on that evening in Cleveland. All of this going on during the Republican convention. And then Gordon says that he was a part of the effort that was pushed by the Trump campaign to put some language in the GOP platform that essentially said that the Republican Party did not advocate for arming the Ukrainians in their battle against those pro-Russian separatists. Of course, that was a big issue that was flaring up at the time of the Republican convention. That effort was ultimately successful. They were successful in having that language in the Republican Party platform. And I asked J.D. Gordon, well, why is that? Why did you go ahead and advocate for that language? And he said that this is the language that Donald Trump himself wanted and advocated for back in March at a meeting at the Unfinished Trump Hotel here in Washington, D.C. J.D. Gordon says then candidate Trump said he did not want to, quote, go to World War III over Ukraine. And so J.D. Gordon says at the Republican convention in Cleveland, he advocated for language in that Republican Party platform that reflected then candidate Trump's comments. And I can tell you, Wolf, going on about this, I asked J.D. Gordon, were there any conversations with the Russian ambassador that he would view as inappropriate? Was there any chatter about quid pro quo, colluding with the Russians to help the Trump campaign? J.D. Gordon says, absolutely not. That would have been inappropriate. He said that his comments.
All right. So, I mean, the story that we get here is that Donald Trump, back in March, while he was running for the Republican nomination, was very measured in his response, thoughtful about the geopolitical situation in Russia, suggested that we should not be supporting the Ukraine strongly enough that this guy took it as the only thing that they would advocate for during the convention in terms of policy change with the Republicans.
Came from a really reflective place. I think, obviously, Trump's always been really concerned about arms control, Eastern Europe, the role of NATO in a post-Cold War world.
And not just that, it is the premier thing that he's interested in.
The premier thing.
Which is why it was one of the few things to end up in the platform as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, it's his thing. That's actually, and so funny that it's like that's the most damning thing I have ever heard in terms of as one data point in terms of Russian collusion. It's like, wait a second, Donald Trump sat down and was really specifically concerned about a foreign policy crisis in a country which I guess he has heard of because he probably has tried to like purchase women from there.
Listen,
like just the
last
idea.
Night, I was just going over my head. I jotted down some language. It is similar to some directives that we had during the 40s and the 50s. And I've just borrowed a little bit from, I tried to write in a Dean Acher style.
You see that 13-year-old girl over there? She's going to look incredible in a couple years. I'm going to date her. It's unbelievable. Am I right? Now, look. There's an internal debate inside the Obama White House right now. Now, Obama, not born here, not a good guy, but very smart on Ukraine. He's following a pragmatic approach. Hillary, crooked Hillary, she wants to have an unnecessarily aggressive posture, which would destabilize Ukraine and put the Baltic states into play. So we need to ratchet down the rhetoric. You guys want to declare that the Earth is 5,000 years old? No problem.
Right.
But we need a smart Ukraine policy.
Look, I drafted something up last night. It's 6 pages, single space. I wanted you to bring it down, but just remember, I've highlighted, and I used multi different fonts here to show you the level of specificity I want and what's genuinely important to me. Now, of course, I want you to negotiate this back and forth with...
I'm going to want back channels with Kislyak. He's a pragmatist. He's connected and trusted by Putin, but not a member of the inner circle. He goes back to Gorbachev. This guy knows what he's doing.
By the way, we played this last Friday, but this is from July 31st when Trump says he had nothing to do with the platform. So if you want to watch this again.
Well, let me just say one more thing. Tiffany and I have gone over this stuff every single word. Spent a lot of time on it.
The power, but the real power behind the throne.
You soften the GOP platform on Ukraine.
I wasn't involved in that. Honestly, I was not involved. Yeah, I was not involved in that. I'd like to, I'd have to take a look at it, but I was not involved.
Do you know what they did?
They softened it, I heard, but I was not involved.
They took away the part of the platform calling for provision of lethal weapons to Ukraine to defend themselves. Why is that a good idea?
Look, you know, I have my own ideas. He's not going into Ukraine, okay? Just so you understand. He's not going to go into Ukraine. All right, you can mark it down, you can put it down, you can take it anywhere you want.
He's already there, isn't he?
Okay, well, he's there in a certain way, but I'm not there. You have Obama there. And frankly, that whole part of the world is a mess under Obama.
Now, I would think if in March of that year, and that's when, that is obviously
July
after, that's
31st.
July, that in March of that year, if this guy is so keyed into this topic that he would be aware that Russia had already incurred into Ukraine.
Well, I think you're missing a pretty key caveat there, which is in a certain sense.
In a certain sense,
yeah,
he's there.
maybe, you know, I know you haven't studied international relations. I did, Sam.
Look,
and you learned
Tiffany
in
told
a certain
me
sense is a very
what
important
you've got
term.
to do. Keep it vague. Keep it vague. Don't want to give it away.
I have to say, every time I see Stephanopoulos, because I read Stephanopoulos' book during the campaign, I always, whenever he's interviewing any of these Trump people, I always think of Bill Clinton. Like, oh, yeah, it was such a big deal that I lied about getting head from some Jew girl in the White House. Apparently, I was such a disgrace, right, George? You needed to build a whole holier-than-thou career about it.
Oh, I didn't know Stephanopoulos did that.
Stephanopoulos used to work at the White House, and then he quit, and he wrote like a kind of like semi sort of tell-all book about the Clinton White House. which I read during the campaign. Actually, one of the funny things was it didn't get run with, but Dick Morris, when he was advising Clinton, was pushing for maybe even worse immigration policies than Trump's doing. And that was like in play, but they didn't run with it.
So we have this J.D. Gordon now who is, I mean, it's almost as if like these Trump officials are like, oh, we're getting I didn't sign an NDA. I can go out and do this, get some, maybe I can get a book deal.
I like
out of
it.
this
Like maybe
already.
you should have focused more on them signing NDAs versus the poor schmucks doing door to door for you, you moron.
Hey, everybody, Sam Seder here.
Donald Trump is a bad guy. Believe me. It's true.
It is true, and you can subscribe to this channel by subscribing to this channel. It's true.